If you're running a company and let's say it's doing 50 million a year, and then all of a sudden you want to go do real estate, you want to do other stuff, I think you've lost your love for your company and you've lost the creativity. It's so hard to get a good team together of people that care, that are competent, that love what they do, and they're working together. That is your most valuable asset. The moment you're done as an entrepreneur, this is something that people don't know about exits, the team moves on.
So how do you identify when you hit your level of self-sabotaging? That was working for you at one level, now it's not. How do you identify when that happens, and then also what is causing it in the first place so then you can fix it?
The symptoms of self-sabotage look like your family being disengaged. You know, on Sunday you're dreading Monday. On Monday you're like, this is gonna be a long week. Your language and your conversation with yourself is a negative one. It's work, it's gonna be a long day, it's a grind. Those are the symptoms. Your family's, not getting the time and attention that they need. You're not taking care of your personal health. You're not happy, your team's not happy. You're frustrated, your team knows you're frustrated. Those are the symptoms that, that you're bumping up against that self-sabotage button.
Makes sense.
And it's real easy from an outsider like me to come in and look and calibrate a person, see what's going on, and then start to help them reorganize their work, restructure things, so that way they can have more fulfillment in it. We often build ourselves into a trap, and we don't realize it. We build ourselves into a job that actually reduces our freedom. We got into entrepreneurship because we wanted to increase our freedom, and then we get to building, we follow different practices and principles that we're taught, and then we have like zero freedom. And then from that, we actually become disenfranchised from our own companies.
Yeah, all those symptoms make sense. How often do you find that it is of an entrepreneur, founder, or CEO of the company dealing with those self-sabotage symptoms, like they are basically hitting the ceiling with their current skill set, right? Their current habits. And how often do you find they're able to work through that and get to the next level and grow through that versus maybe it's time to find someone else to replace them as the active CEO or XYZ to help get the company get to the next level? A
lot of the venture capitalists and private equity companies that I've had the privilege of working with, this is what they do professionally, is they run entrepreneurs, they put a lot of pressure on them, and if they don't get to that next level, they replace them. And sometimes that's what's best for the company, but it's rare. When I come into a founder environment, I think that it's probably the worst thing that can generally happen. The odds of bringing in someone else are very low. It is much better to invest in that founder, develop them, if they're willing. In order to be successful, you have to have two components. You have to have desire and you have to have capacity. If they have the desire to grow and they have the humility to realize that they are beyond their existing skill set, you can unlock their learning agility, you can upskill them, you can get them in training and you can get them to rise to the occasion. Replacing them is generally an extinction level event, and rarely does it work out for the venture capitalist or the entrepreneur that gets replaced.
I've also seen it happen plenty of times to where an entrepreneur gets more successful, they go from one tier to the next. Let's just say they went from their company doing $1 million a month, now they're at $3 million a month. They're making a lot of money and they're enjoying it more. They also start to diversify more. And it's like, I need to get into real estate and then buy this and that. And it takes away more focus and time that they were inputting towards the company that got out to that level in the first place.
Yeah.
How often do you see that happen? And what do you find that keeps entrepreneurs from having that happen and just staying focused in the company in the first place?
Well, it depends on how much they love their company and how creative they are. If you're running a company and let's say it's doing 50 million a year, and then all of a sudden you want to go do real estate, you want to do other stuff, I think you've lost your love for your company and you've lost the creativity, because all of these companies are just environments for us to creatively express ourselves. So why can't we do that within the context of a company that we've built? Why do we have to go do other things outside our company? Generally, it's because we have a partnership structure, we have shareholder structure, or something that has diminished our desire to creatively work within the company that we've built ourselves. So I always tell entrepreneurs something I learned from Steve Jobs, and that is that focus is saying no. You have to say no to all these ideas. And oftentimes I'm teaching entrepreneurs to stay focused on building and maximizing the existing opportunities that they have in front of them, as opposed to pursuing new opportunities. Now, in some cases, it makes sense to try other things. Let's say that they've captured a niche very well. They don't want to scale the existing business because there's some limiting factors and it's running well and it's profitable, and they want to put that thing on autopilot and they want to then go work on other areas. But most often I find that entrepreneurs that are deciding to look at other things are making a mistake in doing that.
Yeah, I generally agree. I like the concept, like Alex Hormozi is saying, more, better, new.
Yeah.
In like first, second, third order. And many times, like, you just give up too early. When you can do a lot more of the thing that you were already doing, and you're gonna have way more success that comes from it. And then when you feel like you actually tap out the market, which almost, it rarely happens, then you can do it better, right? And there's still so much value to extract from it.
Yeah, I agree with that logic. And you know, I had the dream as an entrepreneur to get an exit, and I got my first one when I was 24. And I had this team that I built of about 20 people. I sold it in a $25 million transaction. I thought this is the greatest thing in the world. And the next day, after I sold it and I exited, I didn't have a team. I was like, what the hell do I do with my life? Like, my team is gone. These people that I loved, that I recruited, that I worked with, that I led with vision, that I made an impact in the lives of, that I look forward to seeing every day, no longer work for me anymore. They work for somebody else. And the moment you're done as an entrepreneur, this is something that people don't know about exits, the team moves on. Like, you're yesterday's news, and there's no benefit for them to really stay in touch with you and work with you every day, because they have a new boss, there's new owners, they have a new job. So like, you are a man or a woman without a team and without a purpose, and it's a tough transition period to find your next thing. Then you find your next thing, you build up a team again, and if you're in a situation like I've been in, you exit that, and then you're doing it all over again. And I've done that multiple times because I've had multiple exits, and now I'm at the stage where I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. It's so hard to get a good team together of people that care, that are competent, that love what they do, and they're working together. That is your most valuable asset. That is the hardest thing to create. It doesn't matter what you guys are doing together. It's the fact that you have a team of people that are trying to solve problems in the marketplace, that like each other, that respect each other, that are competent, that are capable, that are doing creative work, that are inspiring. That is the blessing of running a large business. Not the revenue, not the profitability, it's the fact that you get to work with great people. So when you sell that and you exit that, you often find yourself feeling a void there because the great people that you've surrounded yourself with are now doing something other than, you know, working with you.
Yeah, makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So you've had multiple exits, and correct me if I misunderstood, but that's not something that you're looking to do in the foreseeable future, or maybe just here on out, is you don't want to exit a company again.
I have the privilege of helping lots of companies exit now. So in the work that I do, oftentimes entrepreneurs will come to me and they'll say, you know, I want to sell 49% of my company to private equity, and I'll help them do that. Or they want to raise money, or in one case, I helped an entrepreneur go through a turnaround, about $100 million company. They were losing money. I got them turned around and sold off to Magic Johnson's private equity fund, of all people.
Oh, cool.
I did that in a year with them, of course. So, you know, I have the privilege of working in lots of different exit scenarios, and I get to advise entrepreneurs in, you know, how to do these things in ways that either preserve long-term connection to the company, outside ownership, or in the case where they just want to be done with it, to help them get out in a way where they're able to, you know, take as much profit and equity value with them on the way out.
Amazing. Okay. So how do you know, or what are the questions you ask yourself of when you should exit versus when you should keep it and keep scaling? In
one particular case, I helped an entrepreneur sell his company for $80 million just recently. The industry had hit a real prime. He was in the digital media business, and it was taking off like a rocket ship. And he came to me and he said he has some concerns about some changes in the marketplace. There's changes going on that might happen, and he had some risks there. He'd had a big business on his hands, and so we waited out and we said that now's a good time to take some cash off the table. He did, and the industry dropped, and he sold at the very peak. So sometimes I'm trying to time the peak and I'm saying we got to get out because there's some risk there. Other times, you know, I'm helping the entrepreneur stay in the game as long as they possibly can, maybe take some cash off the table now and then stay in on a longer term basis so that way they can take advantage of that peak. The other time that it makes sense to exit is when an entrepreneur is out of love. That they no longer love the work that they're doing. The team that they built and the company they built is better suited in the hands of, say, a new partner or a new owner. So would you categorize that as when you hit that self-sabotage level, and then it's more so the love factor, like your head's not in the game anymore, and so at that point, instead of trying to grow through it, it may be better to exit, have someone else take over and go on to the next journey? If you've learned everything that you can from the adventure that you're on, and there's nothing more for you to learn in this, you're called to do other things. There's other things waking you up, and the business that you have, you might love, but you're called to do other things. You're called to experiment in other territories and learn new things, and you can't find the same amount of excitement and inspired action taking in the company, then it's time to think about other alternatives. Now, the reason why I didn't answer the question, here's exactly when, is because sometimes the ego will trick you into thinking that you're not able to learn anything else in this environment. So oftentimes when I work with entrepreneurs, I kind of help them see, maybe that's your ego there, because if I can look at it with a fresh set of eyes and see plenty of opportunity for growth for the entrepreneur and for me in particular in my work there, then I try to help them see that through a fresh set of eyes. Oftentimes our ego will tell us that that we've climbed a mountain and we've summited the top of the mountain when we really haven't.
And you also mentioned, so you've helped multiple clients exit at what may be the peak of their industry. What makes you and your client identify that this is the peak versus the private equity firm or whoever else the buyer is on the other end of the transaction not identify that? What creates that misalignment?
So I've sold a few businesses at the absolute peak. And this is a little secret in acquisitions, that if you put yourself into the psychological profile of the buyer, and oftentimes in a larger company, this person's bonus is tied upon them completing successful acquisitions. Your company is a great story. They need growth. Their entire reputation with their board, their investors, their management, bonus compensation, all of that is tied to them doing acquisitions. Yeah. So if you know that that's what your counterparty needs, oftentimes they're blinded by the fact that you have high growth, high revenue, and that's very beneficial to them and their relationship with their investors, their board, and the way they get compensated internally. And so, ego and greed are big drivers of acquisitions for sure.
So much incentive is driven through comp structure, pay structure alone, like why you bonus people, what you bonus them for.
Yeah, and on acquisitions, I will listen to the actual negotiation. Sometimes I'm party to them, sometimes I'm just behind the scenes, and sometimes I'm actually feeding them the words and the play-by-play, say this, say that, say this, having done enough of them. I'm actually involved in every letter of every agreement as a silent party that's actually pushing forward, and they don't know I'm even there. Oftentimes they're underestimating the entrepreneur and they don't realize that I'm in their corner with a group of attorneys, that's putting this entrepreneur in a position to get the win. And I enjoy doing that. I don't need to have my name on the documents. I'm happy to be behind the scenes helping them win that way.
How important do you feel storytelling is when it comes to exiting a company?
Storytelling is an extremely important aspect to selling a company. The way you tell your story financially is extremely important. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize that. You have to tell a good story. The way you talk about your innovation, your product development, your growth, the opportunity, that's what's going to entice a person who has deep pockets and the ability to write a big check to be interested in you. You have to have a good story, it has to be compelling, and it has to match the needs of their investment criteria. So if they want to write checks to companies that are growing at 20% month over month compounded, or that have international expansion, or can leverage what's called consolidated savings, meaning I buy this company and I can cut out 50% of its expenses and onboard that to my team, and I can then distribute this company's products in my distribution. You have to know what are the drivers of this company's acquisition strategy, what are the psychological drivers, what are the economic drivers, and you have to basically count their money. And when you understand how much money that they're going to make in the process of acquiring you, then you can set your price accordingly and you can demand a premium, because I already have reverse engineered how much money they're going to make in this acquisition, where their profit lies, what their models suggest. And they're not going to tell you that, because if they did, then that would drive the price up. You have to reverse engineer all of that by doing research and by having some experience in acquisitions behind you to determine exactly the economic factors that they're playing with to make a decision on purchasing you. Once you understand all of that, like, is this going to drive their stock price up? Is this going to give them greater distribution on a product? Is this going to give them some consolidated savings? Is this going to make them look good to their investors and to Wall Street? Is this going to revitalize a dead segment inside their company, or give them some accretive benefit to their existing customer base? Once you identify exactly how they're going to make money, then it's easy to set the price and demand a premium.
Are there any specific resources that stand out to you in terms of building your skill set behind storytelling?
There are. I wasn't a good storyteller when I started. By any means. I studied the greats though. And now, when I was, I'm 47, when I was younger, I didn't have YouTube, I didn't have videos on demand. You had to buy this stuff, you had to attend seminars in person. So you study the greats, you reverse engineer them, you look at their their physical attributes. You look at how they hold themselves, carry themselves, their executive presence. There's so much that a person is telling you. There's so much information that we are all emitting in our physiology, our tonality, our language, our presence, the way we conduct ourselves, that can be reverse engineered and understood. So studying the great ones and studying the masters, communications up until now was really deemed to be more of an art, but it really is now a science. And there's advanced models and AI technology that we're building that help really reverse engineer how to be more effective in communications. I would suggest that you study storytelling, you buy books on storytelling, you study the greats, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musks. These are great storytellers. And that's part of the reason why they have such great success. As far as resources, there's a great book that I recommend to everyone called Resonate by Nancy Duarte. She also has a TED Talk, and you have to just study the art of storytelling. And after you do all the studying, then you got to practice, and then you have to replay the tape. Every time you get out there to tell a story, you have to be humble enough to look yourself in the mirror and say, I could have done better, I could have improved, and make the adjustments each time, because it is something that you have to really see as an active craft. It's not something you learn once, it's something you have to constantly develop and refine as you go.
I was listening to a podcast recently that did a very in-depth segment of Steve Jobs and the presentations that he would do for the new products with Apple. And Steve Jobs even referred to the presentations he would do as a major competitive weapon for the company because of how much results they drove. And I mean, he would rehearse them to every single word for days on end before doing those. And one of the things that was highlighted in that presentation was the words that he would use for just more imagery and description, and talking about how he would call the MacBook Pro bitchin'. And then also it's screaming fast and all these words that you haven't used to, you haven't heard to describe it in that way, but it kind of sticks with you more.
Yeah.
But it was a really cool segment that just went into it in detail on the Founders Podcast. It's one of my favorite podcasts I've been listening to constantly.
Yeah, he's an interesting study. One of the best marketers and storytellers. I've interviewed people that were very close to him, and one of the secrets too, what I like to do is if I want to know more about Steve Jobs and I can't get him on the phone, he's no longer with us, I'm going to talk to people that knew him personally. I'm going to ask him lots of questions, and I'm going to get a hold of those people. I do that nonstop, and I've learned a lot about him and his example. He also had coaches in his corner.
Sure.
He had access to the best linguists, the best storytellers, the best talent and team available to him. And then, of course, he took all of their input, he took their feedback and all of their brilliance, and then he packaged that in such a way that was remarkable and that we all can learn from.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we failed to realize is that Steve had coaches. Steve had mentors. Steve didn't just wake up and become a great storyteller. He realized that there was a skill gap in his storytelling, and he spent his whole life figuring out a way to close that because he knew how important of an asset that was.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
And then speaking on Steve as well, have you read the book Keep It Simple? I think that's what it's called.
I've read the book Insanely Simple.
Insanely Simple.
Yeah, is that the one you're referring to?
Yep.
Yeah, by Ken Segall.
Yep. Really great book, and the whole concept is Steve's philosophy towards simplicity with Apple and how simplicity scales everything.
Yeah.
And what you've mentioned is the bigger a company gets, the higher the top line revenue number gets, the more complexity that comes with it. So how do you see the balancing act, or maybe the battle between a company getting bigger and it getting more complex versus simplicity is what helped them scale to that point in the first place?
It's a real challenge, because as you add new team members, they bring vocabulary and language and acronyms and ways of doing business and process and know-how. And as you add those team members, so do you add complexity. And so if you're a founder, as I am, I have a team of 35 here at AlterCall, so it's a small team, but I get to practice all the work that I do for our clients. I practice on our own team. Yeah. And when we hire a new team member, I have to teach them the language. I have to make sure that I'm correcting new language coming in that doesn't match our ethos and our values, and not allowing ourselves to get mired into false narratives, negative stories, new language. You have to nurture your culture, and your culture is a series of words and a series of things that you recognize and that you correct. So the things that you recognize and that you promote behaviorally and language-wise, those are the things that should be adapted, and then the things that you correct should be eliminated. And as a person that's constantly affecting culture, you have to be on the hunt and on the lookout for anything that is going to make your culture more confusing, more complex, or slow you down. You got to where you're at by way of being very efficient with your language, your products, and so forth, and your new team members, your new ideas, your new products, they're going to slow you down. So you have to be on the hunt to remove any friction point. You have to remove anything that's blocking that. You have to remove people too, going out of their way to try to slow you down. And sometimes those people, ironically, are the very people that you started with, because they're no longer comfortable on a team of 50 as they were on, say, a team of 10. And the people that are comfortable at 50, they don't feel good at 100. Some people at 100, they despise a team of 200. They loved it at 100. At 200, they don't like working there anymore. So that's the challenge, is that not everybody's going to be on the journey with you, and you have to be constantly doing surgery to ensure that the people that are not supposed to be with you on the journey are let go in a compassionate and loving way and coached out of the business, and the new people are brought in that are ready to help you scale. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, help boost this video. I want to get the word out about my work, and I could use your help. Thank you so much, and God bless. If you want to learn more about how I help entrepreneurs scale their businesses and the work that I do with regard to culture, I'm offering an hour of my time to 8-figure entrepreneurs scaling to 9 figures, or if you're a 9-figure entrepreneur scaling to 10, I'd be happy to talk to you for an hour where we can dive into tactics and strategies on culture or anything else that you're up against as an entrepreneur scaling. It's on me because I want to meet people doing big things in the world, and I want to share with you what I'm up to as well. Go ahead and click on Learn More, book your time, and I look forward to meeting you.